Hey everyone, it's Andrew Wilkins here, founder of TopSDRs. Today, sitting down with Charles Bates, a former top SDR, now sitting in a closing role as a founding account executive over at Redbook Cattle. A lot of people I talk to, Charles, have SDRs who are, have experience. They've been in the seat for 1 or 2 years. They're looking to move into that closing role, but they just haven't gotten the opportunity. And that was kind of where you were at. But I'd be curious if you could tell us a little bit more about, prior to moving to Redbook, where were you in your career? Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
I got introduced to software sales 4 or 5 years ago and trying to bring people to the table for some of those sales conversations. I got the opportunity to move into an SDR manager role where I got to run my own team and moved into an account executive position with that same company where I was at for about 9 months. And then that put me in kind of that weird spot that you're talking about where I didn't have the experience to jump directly into another account executive role. So I kind of settled for an SDR position with another company that was kind of in a later startup stage. What I quickly realized with that company was every few months I'd kind of ask, hey, I'm hitting my goals. What else do I need to do to kind of get that conversation going about moving into an account executive position? And it just kept getting bumped further and further down the road. And we're going to look at it. We're going to look at it. We're going to look at it. And every time we got close to our goals would change or our directives would change. I was playing this cat and mouse game of like trying to figure out where the heck I stood, what I needed to do to get better. And there just wasn't a lot of clarity around that.
So one question I have for you, because obviously now your title is founding account executive. So you made the lead, you made it happen, you got it done.
Mhm.
What made you feel confident you could crush it in the closing role? What were you doing kind of on a daily basis to help you improve those skills so you could be ready when the time came?
Thankfully, I did have some opportunities to have some experience, both when I was an account executive, but also as an SDR manager, because I was dealing with clients there. And part of my job there was client renewals and expansions. And so I knew that I could do it. I don't know that I would say that I was overly confident that me moving back into that account executive position, I was just going to come out and crush it. I was either going to try really hard and do really well, or I was going to go down in a ball of fire. I'd rather do that than be stuck in a position where I have no upward mobility. I don't have the ability to bet on myself. If there's no next step, if there's no goal to work towards, there's nothing to kind of move yourself into or prepare for. Like that's why the SDR burnout rate is so high. And so I knew that I wanted to get back into that account executive position where, at least I'm able to kind of see some of that completion of my work. As far as preparing for that role, I did some independent study and training, but I think as long as you're willing to bet on yourself and you know that you like to learn and like to grow, I feel like most people can figure it out, especially if they've been in an SDR seat before and they know how to get rejected over and over and kind of let the water roll off their backs.
Like tell us a little bit about what that experience was like making the jump, how you found yourself in this account executive role. Because I think this is probably what most people want to know about.
I was in that position where I was kind of stuck in the SDR seat. I got a message from your colleague Braden, and then I talked to you as well, and liked what you had going on, where the goal was to move from that SDR seat into that founding account executive role with a young stage startup. And so I really owe it to you guys to give me that opportunity in the first place and just kind of show my value and prove my worth to Redbook. So that was really all it took for me. I was just looking for the right opportunity.
All we did was make the introduction. You did everything else.
Like that is where your value was for me was,
Yeah.
if I knew that if I could get in front of a recruiter or a hiring manager of a company looking for an account executive, I could make a good impression. And so you and Braden, top SDRs, was that opportunity that really propelled me from that SDR seat into that founding account executive role where I am now. And without that, I'd probably still be stuck in an SDR seat somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank
So
you. When you started talking to Jack, who's the founder of Redbook, and for anyone listening that's in this position evaluating a startup to go work, as an opportunity, like how did you evaluate this opportunity and determine, hey, yeah, you know what, this is, this is a jump I'm willing to make and I'm excited to make.
I took a look at Jack, the CEO of Redbook, who I work for now. He's always willing to learn. He's willing to take feedback. And he was very straight up with me. He's like, hey, it's a startup. It's going to be messy, but we're going to try to figure this thing out together. I felt like I had some of that autonomy to do things myself, but also the ability to collaborate with him. I liked the product that he was building and is continuing to build. The work environment of being able to collaborate closely with the CEO and bounce ideas off of each other and feel like it was really going to be a team effort there. And so far that's been very true.
You've been in the role for a few months at this point. Tell us a little bit about like what that looks like what a full cycle role looks like for you. To kind of paint the picture for folks who are wondering what it looks like on the other side once you successfully make that leap.
A lot of it is very similar to doing SDR work. The way that it worked for me was I had a ramp period where I basically started as an SDR. And then over the course of 2.5 months, I moved into that account executive seat. And so on top of prospecting and setting up demos, I would sit in on all the demos. He taught me how to run the sales cycle. He paid for me to do some independent sales training until I kind of got the thumbs up to be able to run demos myself. It was a pretty seamless transition, I'd say, from moving into that SDR seat, ramp up period, and then into that account executive role. Now I'm kind of doing a bit of everything where I'm still doing a lot of the prospecting, going and finding new contacts, a lot of cold calls, a lot of cold emails, things like that. But I'm running my own demos now. I'm starting to work with like referrals. We're getting like some inbounds here and there. I'm doing a lot of the customer support handoff to our customer support person to make sure that there's no missed questions or things like that, and starting to work with some of them on some of the onboarding as well.
If you're talking to somebody who's a rep that's been in the seat for a year or two, they're in that kind of SDR purgatory, as we call it. Curious what you'd say to somebody who's sitting in that seat, kind of thinking about like, hey, do I stay here and keep pushing? Do I make a leap to a startup? Because, again, also a move like this won't be right for everybody. So I'm just curious to hear kind of, yeah, your guidance there and your 2 cents.
For myself, I've never made a job change that I regret. And I always
Mm-hmm.
thought in every job change that I would regret it. And then when I think back to it, it's always been good. I've always grown. I've always learned more new roles. And what I'd recommend some other folks to do is think back through that and like, have you ever made bad job changes? If you have, maybe try to understand why before you do another job change.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
for me, it's not worth being stuck in that SDR seat. Like I know account executives that make so much money and they're doing all inbound work. I think everybody
Totally.
should go through an SDR I guess season before getting into an account executive role. But at some point you gotta make that jump if you really want to make the money, if you really want to grow in that experience. And then once you get that 2 to 3 years of account executive experience, assuming you've done well, that's going to set you up for the rest of your career to not jump ship all the time, but be able to choose the jobs that you
Right.
want to go to, right? So if you get the opportunity, like do your due diligence to make sure that the industry you're going to be moving into or working for is a good industry. There's going to be a lot of prospects, a lot of ability to sell. Depending on the company, try to understand some of the competitors, understand who your manager is going to be, the expectations, who's
Yeah.
going to be kind of in charge of you, things like that. If any one of those things are off, it can kind of screw up your whole, experience. You'll never know until you try it.
If you don't, someone else is going to, and they'll be in that seat. And so I think those are really wise words. Amazing to see the progress you've made and kind of making that dream a reality. So
Yeah.
congratulations and thanks again.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hopefully I'll never have to be back in an SDR seat ever again.
there you go. Exactly. With any luck.